Following the surgery that scooped a piece of my brain out, any affection I held for my wife, Clara, vanished completely. The change was stark and undeniable, becoming clear one afternoon as we walked through a crowded park. A young boy, no older than 7, was tearing across the grass with reckless abandon and collided with us before anyone could react. Instinctively, Clara lunged to pull Julian, her ex-boyfriend who had recently re-entered our lives, out of the child's path. I was left to take the full impact. I hit the packed earth with a hard thud that knocked the wind from my lungs. For a moment, I just lay there, looking up at the sky. Then, I simply got to my feet, dusted the dirt and grass from my jeans, and turned to Clara with a casual air. "I'm starving," I said, my voice even. "What's for dinner?" Clara stared at me, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. "Alex, what is wrong with you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. That day marked a turning point. In the weeks that followed, she transformed into the model of a perfect, attentive wife, a role she had never fully embraced before. She hovered, she fussed, she even began ignoring Julian's frequent calls. It was this sudden, desperate performance that solidified my decision. I brought up the topic of divorce. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and final. Clara was devastated, her eyes welling with tears. "Why?" she whispered. I didn't have the energy for a long explanation. "You're just too much," I told her plainly. "Why don't you go be Julian's wife instead?" Later that night, the pain began. It started as a dull throb in my temples and quickly escalated into a relentless, stabbing agony. It felt as though 1,000 needles were tirelessly piercing my skull. I gasped, my eyes flying open in the dark, my body drenched in a cold sweat. The pain was an overwhelming force, making it impossible to think or breathe properly. A groan escaped my lips, a sound of pure misery I couldn't control. I reached out for the other side of the bed, a reflexive gesture born of 3 years of marriage. "Clara," I mumbled, my voice rough with pain. "My head hurts." My hand met nothing but the cold, empty sheets. The warmth that usually radiated from her side of the bed was gone. That's when the reality of the situation crashed down on me. She wasn't there. The bedroom door was shut, plunging the room into a dim, heavy quiet. Outside, a storm raged, the rain pouring down in dark, relentless sheets against the window pane. Trapped between the oppressive silence inside and the chaotic noise outside, a profound sense of loneliness washed over me. The combination of physical agony and emotional abandonment was a crushing weight on my chest. Fighting through the waves of pain, I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand and called her number. It rang once before going to the busy signal. I tried again and again and again. Each time, the same result. Where could she be? What could she possibly be doing at this hour, in this weather? That was more important than being here. A cold dread began to creep into my heart. Pushing myself upright, I fought against the dizzying pain and managed to change my clothes. I stumbled out of the apartment and into the raging storm, hailing a taxi to take me to the hospital. The short dash from the building to the car was enough to get me soaked, the cold rain plastering my clothes to my skin. The hospital's emergency room was a hive of activity, bright and chaotic even late at night. But unlike the other people waiting, who had family members or friends beside them, I was utterly alone. I found an empty chair in a corner and sank into it, my head splitting, my wet pants clinging uncomfortably to my legs. I felt pathetic, a solitary figure lost in a sea of shared concern. When my number was finally called, I explained my symptoms to the doctor. He asked a few routine questions, his expression neutral at first. But as I described the intensity of the pain, his face grew serious. He immediately ordered me upstairs for a CT scan. Seeing the gravity in his eyes, A knot of fear tightened in my stomach. "Doctor," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, "is it something serious? Am I going to die?" He offered a gentle, reassuring smile. "It's okay," he said softly. "Let's just get the scan first and see what's going on." While waiting outside the CT room, I tried calling Clara one last time. Still no answer. I sighed. Pocketing my phone as a technician called my name, I laid down on the cold, hard table of the machine, feeling a deep, hollow ache that had nothing to do with the pain in my head. By the time I left the hospital the next morning, I felt completely detached from my own body, as if I were walking on clouds. My soul felt like it was drifting, unmoored from any sense of home or belonging. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. A tumor in my brain. He had prescribed some medication to manage the pain and told me to discuss treatment options with my family. Family. The word felt foreign. My father had passed away years ago. I decided to call my mother. She picked up almost immediately, but before I could get a word out, her voice, rushed and preoccupied, cut me off. "I'm making breakfast for Chloe. She's going to be late for school. Call me later, Alex." And then she hung up. Chloe was her daughter from her remarriage. To my mother, I was like a weed that grew on its own, resilient and unremarkable. Chloe, on the other hand, was her precious gemstone, handled with the utmost care, shielded from any potential harm. The throbbing in my head intensified. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the early morning sun was shining on the wet pavement, but its warmth didn't reach me. I still felt a bone-deep cold. I pulled out my phone and sent Clara a series of 3 texts. "Where are you? When are you coming back? I need to talk to you." She finally replied 2 hours later. She claimed there had been an emergency at work right after I fell asleep, and that she would be home in half an hour. I wondered what kind of corporate emergency required an all-in-the-night response from a senior executive, leaving no time for even a single phone call. I didn't press the issue. I just told her to drive safe and come back soon. While I waited, I mindlessly scrolled through social media, and that's when I saw it. A post from Julian, her ex-boyfriend. He had posted it around 1 in the morning. The photo was taken in a warmly lit kitchen. A woman, wearing a light blue shirt I didn't recognize, was focused on stirring a small pot on the stove. Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing slender, pale arms. The steam rising from the pot blurred the profile of the man standing beside her, but the caption left no doubt. Julian had written, "Only you are willing to come through when I need it most, cooking a hot bowl of porridge in the middle of the night." There was my answer. The big emergency was braving a torrential downpour to cook porridge for her ex-boyfriend who had a stomachache. So considerate. I let out a short, sarcastic smirk. Clara and I had met through a setup. If it weren't for the fact that her grandfather and mine had been old army comrades, our paths likely never would have crossed. Under their well-intentioned arrangement, we finally met for dinner. We discovered we had a surprising amount in common, and on a romantic autumn afternoon a few weeks later, she confessed she had feelings for me. I accepted, and we naturally fell into a relationship. My best friend, Mark, once said that Clara and I were 2 peas in the same pod, warm on the outside, but cool and reserved on the inside. We were friendly enough, but very few people ever made it into our inner circles. Our journey from dating to marriage was uneventful. Some might have called our relationship plain, even boring, but I cherished it. For me, that quiet stability was a form of happiness. I first heard Julian's name mentioned at a party. We had been married for 3 years by then, and I thought our foundation was solid. A mutual friend brought up the fact that Julian had recently gotten a divorce. The room fell silent, and all eyes shifted to Clara. She just sipped her drink, cool as ever, and then said with a slight smile, "What, do I look guilty?" Everyone laughed. The tension broke, and the topic was dropped. Later that night, before I could even ask, Clara brought him up herself. "He's my ex," she said simply. "We broke up because of personality differences." I didn't press for details. In your late 20s, who doesn't have a past? As long as it didn't interfere with our present, I was willing to let it go. But reality, I was learning, could be harsh. Clara had no intention of fully letting go. One evening, a few months before my diagnosis, an incident at the kindergarten where I work kept me late. A student had lost a pair of expensive glasses, and all the teachers stayed behind to search for them, finally digging them out of the sandbox. I was exhausted, and a heavy rain had started to fall. I called Clara and asked if she could pick me up. She had offered to do so many times before, but I had always declined. For one, my commute was straightforward, with the subway being incredibly convenient. For another, I hated drawing attention to myself. She once joked, "If you'd let me, I'd get more dressed up to pick you up from work than I did for our wedding day, just to make you proud." I had teased her for being so egotistical. The memory brought a faint smile to my face, but this time she said no. Her voice on the phone sounded weary. "Sorry, Alex. I'm completely swamped at work today. I can't get away." I assured her it was fine. "Take care of yourself," I said. "I'll wait for you at home." I decided to take a cab instead. As we waited at a red light, I spotted a familiar black Bentley in the adjacent lane. Clara drove one just like it. At first, I dismissed it as a coincidence, but as the light counted down, a man got out of the car, dashing into the relentless rain. A moment later, a woman followed him out. It was Clara. I told the driver to stop, quickly scanned the code to pay the fare, and got out of the cab. From a distance, I watched them argue. The man had a handsome, likable face. "I know you're still mad at me," he said, his voice carrying on the damp air. "I'm not showing up to annoy you anymore, I promise." With that, he seemed satisfied, pushed Clara away gently, and ran off into the night. Clara started to go after him, but I called out her name. She froze, turning to see me standing there. We just stood on opposite sides of the rain-swept street, looking at each other. "Let's go home," I said finally. We drove home together in her car, the silence between us thick and heavy. Back in our living room, the quiet persisted. Clara opened her mouth several times, as if wanting to say something, but she seemed to decide against it each time she glanced at my stoic expression. I was the one who finally broke the silence. "Let's get a divorce," I said, my voice flat. "I don't like complicated relationships." Clara jumped to her feet, her expression incredulous. "What are you talking about?" I didn't raise my voice. I just kept my gaze fixed on her. She seemed to deflate like a punctured balloon, squatting down in front of me. "His ex-wife can't accept the divorce and keep stalking him," she explained breathlessly. "He came to me for help." "He should have gone to the police," I replied, "not his ex-girlfriend. You're right." Clara took a deep breath. "I was wrong. I didn't consider your feelings. What do I need to do to make you feel better?" "Block him," I said. "Don't see him again, okay?" Without a moment's hesitation, she pulled out her phone and, right there in front of me, deleted his contact and blocked his number on all platforms. Afterwards, she tried to soothe me. "Why don't you go take a hot shower? If you catch a cold, it would be all my fault." Clara had a way of coaxing people that I found difficult to resist. After that night, Julian seemed to disappear from our lives. Clara started coming home on time, and there were no more late nights at the office. Then, last night, I received a friend request on social media from a man named Julian. I realized then that they hadn't stopped contacting each other. They had just gotten more secretive about it. His message was simple. "I'm Julian. Do you still want these clothes?" He sent a photo of a gray work suit hanging awkwardly among his own clothes. The truth dawned on me. The night Clara had supposedly deleted his contact, she had simply moved him into another villa she owned. I replied to his message with 2 words: throw it away. When Clara came home, I confronted her. "Did you let Julian stay at your place on the west side?" She immediately snapped, her voice sharp with accusation. "Are you stalking me?" "His ex-wife is stalking him with malicious intent," I countered. "Just because he's my ex, does that mean I should just leave him to die? Don't you have any sympathy?" That wasn't the tone for a conversation. I widened my eyes, looking at her in shock, before turning and walking back to our bedroom. Half an hour later, Clara quietly entered the room and hugged me from behind. Her voice was soft, laced with a hint of grievance. "Didn't we promise not to give each other the cold shoulder? There's really nothing going on between me and Julian. I just felt sorry for him. Once his ex-wife gives up, I'll have him leave the city." She rambled on, but I wasn't listening. I hate arguments. They turn people into demons, reminding me of my first years in the city after leaving my grandmother's care. I was constantly subjected to my parents' screaming matches. My dad would accuse my mom of aborting the child he had wanted for years. My mom would accuse my dad of cheating, of having his cake and eating it too. She called it karma. I tried to stop them once, but my dad kicked me away. I lay on the floor, sobbing, but no one came to comfort me. Dad blamed Mom for bringing me to the city in the first place, and Mom said it was Grandma's idea. Their argument eventually turned physical. I just sat there alone, watching them. My grandma had told me that my parents bringing me to the city was a sign of their love, and that I should be obedient and study hard. But did they love me? If my grandma had been there, she would have hugged me tightly and called me the bravest child in the world. Eventually, I went to my room, stuck pieces of paper in my ears, and hid in the back of the closet. I grew up surrounded by their arguments, right up until my dad unexpectedly passed away. I swore to myself then that I would never resolve problems by fighting. When I first told Clara about my childhood, she held me close and promised she would never put me in a situation like that. But now, it seemed she had forgotten that promise. As I started to drift off to sleep, I felt something gently touch my forehead, and I heard her sigh. "What am I going to do with you?" The sound of the front door opening pulled my thoughts back to the present. Clara walked in carrying breakfast from the corner cafe, my favorite. She placed it in front of me with a kind smile. "You haven't had breakfast yet, right? I waited in a long line to get this for you. You should eat it while it's still hot." After setting the food down, she looked up at me, her expression serious. "Is there something you want to say to me?" I met her gaze, seeing my own pale, tired face reflected in her dark eyes. My gaze drifted down to the unfamiliar white shirt she was wearing. "Did you change your clothes?" I asked. Clara paused for a beat before nodding gently. "I got wet in the rain last night, so I changed." I let out a small chuckle, unable to hide the sarcasm in my voice. "And is there anything you want to say to me?" She quickly averted her eyes, focusing her attention on peeling a hard-boiled egg for me. "Work is just boring. There's nothing much to talk about." I looked up at the empty space above her head. "I don't have anything to say either." I had no intention of telling her about the tumor. She was no longer someone I was willing to trust, rely on, or spend the rest of my life with. While I was trying to come up with a reason for why I might need to disappear for a while, she conveniently mentioned she had to go on a business trip that could last up to a month. "I'll come back as soon as I possibly can," she promised. I didn't ask where she was going or what the trip was for. I just nodded. "All right." When I woke up the next morning, Clara was already gone. There was a sticky note on the nightstand covered in her handwriting, filled with reminders. Don't stay up late. Don't skip breakfast. Don't read in dim light. I glanced at it for a second before ripping it off and tossing it into the trash can. I packed a small bag of clothes, called in sick to work, and went to the hospital alone to check myself in. After a battery of tests, the surgical plan was confirmed. A craniotomy to remove the tumor. Late that night, lying on the stiff hospital bed, I was terrified of the surgery scheduled for the next day. I would never admit it out loud, but the fear was real. But who could I talk to? My mom was busy being a mother to Chloe, not even bothering to answer my calls. Mark was filming in some remote, mountainous area, and who knew when his phone would have a signal? As for Clara, forget it. She was with Julian. I had learned that Julian's father had become gravely ill, and somehow my wife had gone with him to visit his family. I turned onto my side, pressing my hand against my chest, where a dull ache had settled. We were supposed to be family, but that word felt meaningless now. I was alone again. The surgery was a success. When I woke up, my limbs felt heavy and disconnected, but my head felt surprisingly light. The biopsy results came back benign. I found I had no one to immediately share the good news with, so I sent a text to Mark, hoping he'd see it eventually. I stayed in the hospital for 3 weeks, and my recovery went very well. During that entire time, I didn't think about Clara even once. After I was discharged, the wig I had ordered online arrived. The short, black synthetic hair covered my head, making my already pale face look even whiter. I smiled at my reflection in the mirror. It was a bit ugly, but that was okay. Everything was going to get better. The day after I got home, Clara showed up, and she brought Julian with her. I was surprisingly calm when I saw the man standing behind her. I had already found out from his social media a few days prior that his father had passed away. Before he died, he had apparently asked Clara and Julian to take care of each other. And my loving wife, of course, had agreed. Clara stood protectively in front of Julian. "Julian just went through a major blow," she announced. "I want him to stay with us for a while." Julian whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "If Alex minds, I'll just head back home." He sounded so pitiful. Clara shot me a look that was clearly blaming me for his discomfort, and I hadn't even said a word yet. I just walked past them into the kitchen to get a cup of hot water. "We should respect the dead," I sighed, then nodded calmly. "Oh." Clara and Julian were both shocked by my placid reaction, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. I walked past them towards my room, grabbing my pillow and blanket from the bed. "The master bedroom is bigger," I said generously. "You two can have it." I thought they would be pleased with my understanding. But instead, Clara became furious. Her usually gentle face contorted with anger. "Alex, what is your problem? Can't you have a little bit of understanding for Julian? He just lost a family member and he's being hounded by his crazy ex-wife. Anyone with a shred of sympathy would understand that. Why can't you?" I just looked at her. Logic dictated that I should feel sad right now. After all, she was my wife, and she was pushing me to let her ex-boyfriend stay in our home. We had been married for 3 years. Even though we met on a blind date, we still had feelings for each other. Otherwise, in my darkest moments, she wouldn't have been the first person I thought of. But emotionally, I felt a complete void. She stood in front of me like the most familiar stranger I had ever known. I couldn't feel anger or sadness, just an overwhelming sense of tiredness. The doctor had advised me to get plenty of sleep. I wanted to recover quickly, so I had to follow his orders. I decided to dodge the confrontation. "I'm not making a fuss," I said calmly. "Let him stay." I went into the guest room. Clara grabbed the doorknob. "What are you doing?" "Didn't I just explain the situation?" I didn't respond. I shook her hand off and closed the door. "Alex!" she yelled, kicking the door in frustration. From the other side, I heard Julian's theatrical voice. "Maybe I shouldn't have come. If I didn't, you and Alex wouldn't be arguing. I'm just a burden. I'll leave and not drag you two down." He pretended to leave, but as he opened the front door, Clara's voice stopped him. "It's not your fault. He's the one who's overthinking things. Don't let it bother you. Stay. There's still a room available." After a while, Clara came and knocked on my door again. I ignored it. I took off my wig, set it on the nightstand, and downed a handful of the pills my doctor had prescribed. Sleepiness quickly washed over me, and I drifted off, completely unaware that Clara was pacing anxiously outside my room until midnight. I slept until noon the next day. After washing up, I got ready to go downstairs for some lunch. A full breakfast was laid out on the dining table, filled with all the things I supposedly loved. A sticky note was attached, reminding me to eat before going to work. She didn't know I had taken a 3-month medical leave. I stared at the spread for a moment. The food had long gone cold, just like my heart. Pretending not to see it, I walked right past the table and out the front door. There was a small restaurant just outside our neighborhood that catered to the tastes of most of the locals, serving very bland food. I personally prefer stronger, more robust flavors, but Clara loved it, so we often went there together. My doctor had recommended a bland diet during my recovery, so I decided to go in. Coincidentally, Julian was there too. Sitting across from him was Clara, who was supposed to be at work. I heard Clara's gentle voice. "Isn't this your favorite? This place is really nice." Julian glanced at me out of the corner of his eye. He didn't look at me directly, but offered a small, smug smile. "So, you came back from work just to have lunch with me?" Clara didn't reply. He continued, "Does Alex like this place too?" She paused, then replied uncertainly, "Maybe, I don't think so." There was an open table right behind them, so I started walking towards it. Clara heard my footsteps, looked back, and her eyes widened in surprise. She stood up abruptly. "Alex, you didn't go to work?" Julian also stood up, feigning a surface-level guilt. "Alex, I didn't know you were at home. Otherwise, I would have invited you to come down with us. This is all my fault." Just then, a waiter's frantic voice cut through the restaurant's quiet murmur. "Kid, no running in the restaurant!" A little boy holding a small bowl was running wildly through the tables, giggling. He was glaring back at the waiter trying to stop him, and wasn't looking where he was going. He was headed right for us. "Watch out!" the waiter shouted. In the ensuing chaos, Clara instinctively reached out and pulled Julian towards her, making him dodge the impending crash. The little boy, however, crashed straight into me, knocking me off balance. I couldn't grab the table in time and landed hard on the floor. Warm soup from his bowl spilled all over my shirt and pants. In that moment, the entire restaurant sank into an eerie silence. Clara stood there, staring in disbelief at her own hand, the one that had saved Julian. She was the first to break the awkward silence, releasing her grip on Julian and bending down to help me up, her face a mask of concern. "Alex, are you okay?" I decisively pushed her hand away. I got up on my own, using the table for support, and brushed myself off. I didn't look at her. I didn't feel the sting of not being her priority. Instead, I looked down at the boy, who was now lying on the ground crying loudly, and said calmly, "You ran into me. You need to apologize." The boy's parents suddenly sprang to life, rushing over to scoop him up. His father glared at me. "What gives you the right to talk to my kid like that? Do you own this restaurant? If you weren't standing in the way, my kid wouldn't have run into you." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Sir, raising your voice doesn't make you right. Anyone with eyes can see that it was your child who wasn't looking where he was going and ran into someone." The boy's mother rolled up her sleeves, ready for a fight. "Who are you? Is this any of your business?" "I'm his wife," Clara stated. "So yes, it is." I cut her off calmly. She has nothing to do with this. I'm talking about your child hitting me. He spilled soup all over my clothes. And you're picking on a kid over a little soup? The father shot back. Seeing that reasoning with them was futile, I took out my phone. What are you doing? The mother asked. Calling the police to have them take your kid away, I said. My slightly grim tone finally scared the child. He clung to his father's leg, sobbing. I don't want to be taken away. I don't want the cops to take me. I'm sorry. I won't run around anymore. Daddy, don't let the cops take me. As soon as they saw I was serious about calling the police, their attitude softened considerably. For such a minor thing, are you really going to call the police? The father asked, his voice much more subdued. I laid out my terms. First, an apology, and second, money to cover the cost of my ruined clothes. The kid apologized through his tears, and they quickly transferred the money to me. As they were leaving, the kid's mom glanced back at me defiantly. Only someone like you would make such a fuss over this. No wonder your wife's cheating on you. Clara's face darkened immediately, and she snapped, What are you saying? But the woman shot back, Come on, do you think we're blind? You and that guy have been all lovey-dovey since you walked in. If you're not his wife, then what are you? His affair. Clara's expression grew even darker, and she clenched her fists. The tension in the air was thick, like something was about to explode. Julian anxiously said something, trying to de-escalate, but I ignored their drama. I went to the front desk, paid for some takeout, and left. As I walked out, I faintly heard someone call my name, but I didn't turn around. Clara got back about half an hour after I did. She came in alone, standing silently in the doorway with a complicated look in her eyes. Finally, she asked, Why didn't you let me help you earlier? I was puzzled. Was there any need? Clara seemed strange, insisting, Yes, there was. We're family. When you face trouble, you should come to me first. I was taken aback. At least, that's what I used to think before Julian showed up. Feeling a wave of annoyance, I sighed. It's not necessary. Clara's eyes suddenly reddened. Alex, why do I feel like you don't care about me at all anymore? It's not just a feeling, I said flatly. She jolted, staring at me intensely. Then she let out a cold laugh and dialed a number on her phone. When the call connected, she spoke in a low, tender tone, the kind a lover would use. Julian, don't worry about moving out. Just treat this place as your home. I actually want you to stay. As she spoke, she looked directly at me, trying to detect any hint of jealousy or anger on my face. But she had miscalculated. I truly didn't care. As long as they didn't disturb my peace and quiet, they could do whatever they wanted. I had even thought about moving out myself, but the hassle of packing and moving seemed like too much effort. The idea quickly faded. I would just hold on. I had a follow-up checkup at the hospital in a week. Right now, my energy was limited, and I needed to save it all for myself. Julian came back. Clara, quite deliberately, would often get cozy with him right in front of me, but I treated them like they were invisible. The calmer and more indifferent I was, the more Clara seemed desperate to prove a point. She would call Julian into the kitchen to cook with her, and they would act like a happy, domestic couple. Every now and then, Julian would reminisce loudly. You used to love cooking for me back then, he'd say. I remember when we first got together, I didn't even know you needed water to cook rice. I told you I wanted to try your cooking, and you actually learned from a professional chef. Your friends used to joke that you were more serious about it than you were about your college entrance exams. I never should have left without saying goodbye. Julian was getting emotional, and Clara seemed lost in thought until some hot oil splattered on his arm, jerking her back to reality at his yelp of pain. Seeing the oil stain on his shirt, Clara stopped him from going to change. She walked out of the kitchen and said casually, Alex, Get Julian one of your shirts. He didn't bring many with him. I didn't move from my spot on the couch. At first, she wasn't mad, maybe even a bit smug. If you don't want to, never mind, she said. I'll just have him buy some new ones. I nodded. I'll get it. There's some old stuff I hardly wear anymore that could be put to use. I went into the master bedroom, rummaged through the closet, found a pile of old clothes, and tossed them on the chair in front of Julian. Take them all, I said nonchalantly. Clara's stiff gaze landed on the black shirt on top of the pile. Her face changed, her expression turning incredulous. Why are you giving this one to him? What's wrong with it? This is the shirt you wore on our first date, the day we met. It hasn't fit you in over a year, yet you could never bring yourself to part with it. And now you're just giving it to Julian? If it doesn't fit, get rid of it, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Things that are tied to feelings only have value if the feelings are still there. Without that, it's just an old shirt that doesn't fit. Clara clutched the shirt tightly, her eyes stormy. Julian tried to take it from her, but she pushed his hand away. Suddenly, she yanked Julian into the guest room where he had been staying. Pack your things and leave, she ordered. Julian looked completely baffled. You were the one who told me to come back, and now you're telling me to leave? Clara, what's gotten into you? What do you take me for? Clara's voice was unexpectedly calm. Julian, we're history. He gritted his teeth. That's a lie. If you didn't care about me, why did you go with me to see my dad? And that night? Clara's face darkened, and she looked up at him with an intimidating glare. Julian. He flinched, glancing at my indifferent expression, then gave a strange, bitter smile. Fine. I won't say any more. Clara, don't you regret this? Dragging his suitcase behind him, he stomped out of the apartment. Clara closed the door and let out a long breath of relief. Acting unfazed, she came over to me, crouching down and trying to take my hand. Alex, can we just move on from this and be happy together? I promise. There won't be anyone else from now on. Startled, I stood up and practically rolled my eyes at her. Now, Clara seemed like a completely different person, constantly seeking my attention and approval. Why are you taking time off work? It's okay if you don't want to go back to your job. What do you want to eat today? I'll cook it for you. I had heard from one of her friends that Clara was quite the cook, which surprised me, since she had never cooked a single meal for me in our 3 years of marriage. When I had once told her I wanted to taste her cooking, she flatly refused, saying it had been so long that she was rusty. Yet now, when I had no interest in eating, she suddenly insisted on cooking for me. Fed up, I finally asked her, "Don't you have work to do?" Clara's eyes lit up. "I've taken a week off to spend time with you." I slammed my bedroom door shut in her face. I began to seriously consider divorce again. Clara's constant presence was starting to affect my mood, and the doctor had stressed that staying in good spirits was crucial for my recovery. I had intended to think about the divorce after my upcoming checkup, but I couldn't wait any longer. I reached out to a lawyer I found online. At noon, Clara knocked on my door. When I answered, her face was full of eager anticipation. "The food is all ready. Why are you getting changed? Where are you going?" I brushed past her. As I walked by the dining table, I saw the so-called food she had prepared, all the bland dishes I supposedly loved to eat. In reality, I hated bland food. Clara was taken aback. "I thought you liked this." "No," I said simply. "That's what you like." She forced a smile. "I'll remember that for next time. Where are you headed? I can give you a ride." "No need." I smiled at her. "Just wait for me here. I'll be right back." Feeling flattered by my tone, Clara obediently sat down at the table. I came back a short while later with the divorce papers. She was sitting exactly as I had left her. She got up, smiling, ready to say something, but I cut her off. I laid the papers out on the table right under her nose. "Let's get divorced," I said. "See if there's anything you want to discuss in the terms. There's a huge gap in our incomes. I'm not greedy, but you were the one who cheated. So I want the villa in the west suburbs, the big flat downtown, and this place, too. That's not a big deal for you, right?" Clara's face went pale. After a long moment, she squeezed out the words, "I don't agree to the divorce." "Why not? We don't have feelings for each other anymore. A divorce would be good for both of us." She became highly emotional. "Who said we don't have feelings for each other anymore?" I scoffed. "I'm not stupid, Clara. The night you said you were working late, you came back wearing different clothes than the ones I saw you in at Julian's house. What kind of situation at his house required you to change your clothes?" Clara tried to explain. "His ex-wife showed up, and as a friend, I went to see what was going on. Nothing happened between us. My clothes got soaked in the rain, and I didn't want you to misunderstand. So I had my secretary drop off a spare set. I didn't cheat on you." I didn't say whether I believed her or not. I just nodded and went to pack my things. "If you don't agree to the divorce, then let's separate for now." Clara grabbed my hand, her lips turning white. "Where are you going?" I pulled my hand away. "To a place without you. Seeing you makes me feel nauseous. It ruins my mood." Clara had always seemed modest and reserved, but she was actually incredibly proud. Having been born with a silver spoon in her mouth, she had probably never faced much hardship in her life. But here I was, being completely unreasonable, ignoring her attempts at reconciliation, and calling her disgusting. Her pride couldn't take it. She let go of my hand and said coldly, "Alex, I won't agree to the divorce. Get over it." I moved into the big flat downtown and enjoyed the rare peace and quiet. I regretted not moving out sooner. I should have done this months ago. While wandering around the complex downstairs, I bumped into someone. "Mr. G?" a woman's voice said. She was tall and skinny, with glasses and intelligent brown eyes that gave off a cool, professional vibe. It was the doctor who had performed my surgery, Dr. Emily Evans. I awkwardly made small talk, feeling like a student facing a strict teacher again. "You live here too?" "Yeah," she said. "I haven't seen you around before." I pointed to the building behind me. "I just moved in. I live in this one?" Dr. Evans raised an eyebrow. "What a coincidence." She must have just finished a night shift. There were faint, dark circles under her eyes. We chatted for a bit, and I saw her sneakily try to stifle a yawn. That small, human moment made her seem much less intimidating. I smiled. "I won't keep you. You should get some rest." She nodded, looking slightly embarrassed, and put her hand down. "Remember to come back to the hospital for your follow-up," she reminded me. I took a half-hour walk, and then slowly started getting settled into my new place. But people like Clara are like flies. They can't resist bothering you. In the middle of the night, Julian started bombarding my phone with texts. The first was a selfie of him, with Clara leaning into his side, looking quite intimate. The messages that followed were a torrent of taunts. "You guys have been married for 3 years. I asked Clara what your marriage was like. She said it was like plain water, super boring. You know what? We dated for 4 years. Every time I got mad and mentioned breaking up, Clara would always want to make up, treating me like a princess. Have you ever experienced that? If I hadn't wanted to marry late and disappeared on her, do you honestly think you would have ever had a chance?" Alex, you were just the fallback, the reality she was forced to settle for. I stared at the picture for a long while. My heart instinctively clenched, but it was just a physical reaction, not an emotional one. I couldn't imagine how I would have felt if I still loved her. Seeing this picture would have probably broken me. I didn't have a lot of love in my life to begin with, and now, to be told so bluntly that the warmth of the past 3 years might have been fake, That what I thought was love was just her settling and fulfilling a duty. Well, if that was the case, then she should grant me a divorce. I was all for it. The next day, Clara was blocking my door in broad daylight, her face a mask of fury. "Alex, I can't believe you're so cruel. You knew Julian's ex-wife was trouble, and you told her where he was staying. I really misjudged you." I quickly figured out what must have happened and laughed. "You think it was me? Who else could it be?" Faced with this groundless accusation, I immediately called the police right in front of her. "Go ahead," I said. "I'm not going to be accused of something I didn't do." She grabbed my hand, her expression suddenly suspicious. "It really wasn't you?" I looked at her without a trace of emotion. When have I ever met his ex-wife, and how would I have gotten her phone number? Julian's ex-wife came from a rich family, but after their success, her brother got into gambling and lost all the family's money. He often forced his sister to go back to Julian for money. Julian had gone to great lengths to get a divorce, leaving everything behind and even selling their house. His ex-wife, feeling she had no other backup, went back to clinging to him. Clara's face showed that she understood. Her eyes were conflicted. I smirked. "You obviously trust him more than me. So why not just divorce me? What am I, just a part of your game with him? I can't deny Julian really doesn't hold back. He avoids his ex like the plague, but then he doesn't mind letting trouble into our lives to get what he wants." Clara looked embarrassed. "I thought he wouldn't lie to me. He never did before." I mocked her. "You two are a perfect match. One's a liar, and the other's a brainless fool." Clara couldn't take being insulted twice. She snapped, "You think I can't do without you?" God, I hope not. I learned my lesson from one loss. Suddenly, my neighbor's door opened, and Dr. Evans came out. Her serious expression softened when she saw me. Her gaze shifted between Clara and me. "Do you need help?" Clara quickly grabbed my hand, her expression wary. "Alex? Who is she?" I tried to pull my hand back, but she wouldn't let go. Dr. Evans walked over, lowering her voice. "Please let him go." "I'm talking to my husband. How is it any of your business?" Dr. Evans looked surprised. I had stayed in the hospital for a long time, and no one had ever come to see me. I only had a nurse I had hired to take care of things. The hospital staff thought I was single with no family around, so when they had free time, some of the doctors and nurses would drop by my room to chat. I quickly clarified, "Future ex-wife." Dr. Evans understood. Clara, however, got even angrier and said sarcastically, "I was wondering why you've suddenly turned so cold and keep talking about divorce. It turns out you've already found someone else." "Not everyone is as shameless as you are," I retorted. Clara raised her voice. "Shameless me?" Before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly lashed out, swinging her hand in a slap aimed at Dr. Evans's face. Dr. Evans didn't see it coming and took the full force of the hit, but she quickly retaliated with a slap of her own. I was stunned for a second, my mind racing. Dr. Evans is a surgeon. Her hands are her livelihood. They can't get hurt. I rushed over, spreading my arms wide to shield her, and glared fiercely at Clara. Her arm dropped weakly to her side, as if she had been hit with a massive blow. She mumbled, "Alex, you're protecting her." I kept my face stern. "Clara, there's something seriously wrong with you. What gives you the right to hit people?" I quickly checked on Dr. Evans. Thankfully, her hands were fine, but her face was already starting to bruise. I felt incredibly guilty. "Dr. Evans, I'm so sorry. I didn't expect you to get dragged into this." Dr. Evans's eyes flashed, and she calmly replied, "It's okay." Clara let out a few hoarse laughs. "Fine. Divorce, then. Do you really think I still love you?" A sudden, profound sense of relief washed over me. I quickly pulled out the signed divorce papers from my bag and handed her a pen with both hands. Clara signed her name with flamboyant, angry strokes, tossed the pen aside, and walked off. I carefully put the agreement away, shouting after her, "See you at the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. Don't be late." But Helen stood me up. I waited from 10 o'clock until noon, and she never showed. Furious, I called her. "Clara, do you remember what day it is? When are you coming to the Civil Affairs Bureau?" She feigned ignorance. "What Civil Affairs Bureau? I'm on a business trip." I hung up in a rage and started driving towards her office. Halfway there, Mark texted me, "Plane lands in half an hour." I slammed on the brakes and turned the car around. When Mark saw me, his eyes were full of concern. "Why is your face so pale?" My nose tingled. In the few days that Clara had been back and trying to reconcile, she never once commented on how I looked, but Mark, my best friend, couldn't help but notice immediately. He pulled me into a hug, and I found myself crying. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here for you." Seething with anger, Mark asked about Clara. "Where is that I filled him in on the recent events, my voice laced with frustration. "I just don't understand why she's dragging this out." Mark held my shoulders, his eyes blazing. "She dares to bully you? Let me deal with her." Ignoring my protests, he got out of the car and hailed a taxi to go find Clara. I had no choice but to follow him. When we arrived, Clara's office was already in an uproar. The employees were crowded at the door, pretending to work, but their ears were all perked up. Clara was backed into a corner, looking awkward and flustered. "Mark, are you crazy?" "No, you're crazy. What gave you the right to bully Alex?" "Who bullied him? He's the one who wants to leave and is asking for a divorce." "Bullshit! You didn't bully him. You left him to go through brain surgery all by himself. You left him in the hospital to suffer alone, not knowing who he could talk to." Clara froze on the spot. "What brain surgery? He didn't tell me anything." "How could he tell you? Weren't you too busy playing the dutiful daughter-in-law with Julian? So filial, rushing to play stepson to your ex's dying dad? And yet you still won't grant him a divorce?" Clara's face turned a ghostly white. From across the room she looked at me, her eyes flashing with 1,000 emotions. Regret, guilt, pain. Only then did the other employees notice the subject of the gossip standing among them. I suddenly felt like a monkey in a circus. I covered my face and stepped into her office, closing the door to block out all the prying gazes. "It's all in the past," I said quietly. I took off my wig, showing her the newly sprouted short hair underneath, and a scar that ran the length of my thumb along my hairline. Clara's gaze recoiled as if she had been seared by fire when she saw the wound. She wanted to reach out but retreated, her hand trembling, her eyes reddened. "I didn't know," she whispered. "It was too cruel. My pale complexion, the medication I was taking, I hadn't hidden any of it. And Clara claimed she didn't know. Thankfully, I really didn't care about her anymore." "Maybe it's a side effect of the surgery," I said. "I'm not sure." "I'm sorry," Clara cried. I stayed calm. "There's no need to apologize. It's just because you didn't care." She hurriedly interrupted. "I did care." "Well, I couldn't see it. You hid things from me and took care of Julian, leaving me to deal with his father's mess, and then you brought him back to our home. All I can see is how much you cherish him. As for us, maybe we just aren't a good fit. Didn't you tell Julian our marriage was too plain, too much like bland water? You said it wore you out. Coincidentally, I'm tired too. Take your time to think about it. But this divorce comes from a place of sincerity, not anger." Clara bowed her head, remaining silent. Feeling a sense of pointlessness, I dragged Mark away. To my surprise, she called me later that night. "Fine," she said, her voice resigned. "I agree to the divorce." Then she added, almost in a whisper, "Alex, I love you. I just wanted a fresh start for us." This time, Clara showed up on time. She even brought a new divorce agreement. Seeing the portion of the assets she had allocated to me, I was pleased, but I kept my expression neutral and signed decisively. Clara, however, hesitated for a long time before eventually signing under my persistent urging. We submitted the application at the divorce window. There was a 1-month cool-off period before we could collect the final papers. During that month, Mark took me for a checkup. The results were great. Dr. Evans wished me a speedy, hair-growing recovery. I even gave both Mark and Dr. Evans a thank you banner as a joke. On the day the divorce was finalized, I truly felt free. Walking out of the Civil Affairs Bureau with Clara, we headed in opposite directions. After just a few steps, she called out my name. "Alex!" When I looked back, she was crying. Unlike her usual quiet tears, this time she was a mess, sobbing uncontrollably like a child who had just lost their favorite toy. My brow furrowed. Clara was raised under a strict, disciplined household. Her grandfather believed in the maxim that children needed the rod to grow, and he demanded that she never cry, not at any time for any reason. A couple of years back, when he passed away, she spent an entire day in complete silence, not shedding a single tear, as if she had lost her soul. I saw her hidden vulnerability in that instant. In those quiet nights that followed his death, I would sit by her side, holding her head gently and saying, "Clara, you can cry. I won't laugh at you or blame you. When you're with me, it's okay to cry when you're sad." Helen would bury her head in my shoulder. At first, I just felt the dampness on my shirt, but then gradually she would start to cry louder. "I don't have Grandpa anymore, Alex," she'd sob. I would reply, "You still have me." Back then, I felt nothing but a tender pity for her. Now, though, her sobs only left me feeling irritable. "Stop crying," I said sharply. "It's annoying. You're not a kid anymore." I turned and walked away, leaving her tears and her vulnerability behind me. I posted my divorce certificate on social media, announcing my real freedom. My mom immediately called and gave me an earful. I told her that Clara had cheated. She yelled, "You couldn't keep your wife." She insisted, "Get back with Clara, or you don't have me as your mom." I replied cheerfully, "All right, ma'am. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up." That same afternoon, she stormed over to my flat. When I opened the door, she slapped me across the face. "Alex, you've really got guts now, don't you? I thought Clara was just having a little fling and didn't actually plan on divorcing you. Go and beg her for forgiveness so you two can work things out." I stared at her, and a sudden, humorless smile spread across my face. That's my mom. My grandma always said my parents loved me, as long as I listened, as long as I kept listening. And you see, I've been obedient. After college, I didn't take a single dime from them. There was a time she was in the hospital with severe back pain, and I dropped everything to go and help her. Her new husband only visited her briefly and didn't even want to pay for her medical bills. Yet her mind is always on her husband and their daughter. Now, I sighed, taking off my wig. "Mom, do you remember a couple of months ago when I called you? I was trying to tell you that I had a tumor and needed surgery. I was hoping you'd come and see me. But you were busy with your daughter, Chloe, and said you'd call me back. But it's been 2 months now. Sometimes I seriously doubt if I'm your biological child because of the way you treat me." She hesitated. "You didn't tell me. How could I know if you don't tell me?" She seemed to regain her confidence. "It was just a surgery, and you're standing here perfectly fine now, aren't you? I'm your mother, and your sister is still young. Isn't it right for me to take care of her? Competing with your own sister for affection? It's like you're regressing." But the way her hands trembled at her sides betrayed her unease. Luckily for her, she wasn't as indifferent as she claimed to be, or I would have felt even more pathetic. I had posted the divorce certificate online specifically to see what her first reaction would be when she showed up. Would she show even a hint of concern for me? Before my marriage, she never stopped stressing. "Take good care of Clara. We need to wait until your sister graduates so she can join her company." Maybe I did mean something to her, but compared to her daughter's future, it was nothing. I chuckled. "Mom, this is the last time I'm calling you Mom." Her face turned red. "Alex, you can't do this to me. I gave birth to you. You owe me for life," I said. "If we're keeping score, I might have to talk to your husband about getting back the $5 million I lent Clara for her business before our divorce. That's marital property." She glared. "You wouldn't dare." I calmly replied, "I dare." I blocked my mom on all channels and decided to move to my new place, the villa in the west suburbs. It was beautifully landscaped, and as it turned out, there was already a guest living there. It was a sunny morning when I brought people over to move my things in. Julian was indeed staying there. He was furious. "Alex, what are you doing?" I crossed my arms. "This is my property. You are living here without permission and without paying rent. That's not reasonable." Julian shouted, "It was Clara who let me stay here." "But now it's mine." I had his stuff packed up and thrown out onto the curb. He fumed, "Alex, you'll regret this." I knew his trick. Cling to Clara persistently. Sure enough, Clara texted me a short while later. "Alex, you don't have to be so harsh. He just needed a place to stay." I sent her a bundle of screenshots of our last 2 months of chat records with Julian. Finally, I added, "If not for his constant provocations, I wouldn't have even thought of getting a divorce." Clara was silenced. Soon, I heard from some of her friends about what happened to Julian. Clara took back the apartment she had been lending him and hired a lawyer to reclaim all the money she had spent on him over the years. 50 grand, due by the end of the month. With no place to hide, Julian was found by his ex-wife again. Her family were all leeches. Though I didn't like Julian, I loathed his ex-wife's kind even more. Clara sent me a friend request, seemingly seeking some amusement at Julian's expense, but I warned her that his ex should probably be in jail. Then, shockingly, the news exploded online. Julian's ex-wife was dead, and Clara had been stabbed. Julian was the perpetrator, charged with attempted murder. He got a life sentence. Through the news reports, I pieced together the story. Hounded by his ex, Julian had finally snapped and killed her in her sleep late one night. Then, he had taken a knife to Clara's place, causing her serious harm. Clara remained in a coma. It was sad and tragic. Beyond that, I felt no other emotion. It was like watching the lives of complete strangers unfold. Clara woke up after half a month. She called me from a friend's phone. "Alex, it's me." She paused quietly, then softly asked, "Did it hurt back then?" I replied flatly, "It's all in the past." "Can you come see me?" "That seems unnecessary now." Clara coughed, her composed facade finally falling apart, and she choked up. "Julian asked me why I gave him hope if I didn't like him. My actions led him to believe that you were just a husband in name only, that I only married you to meet my grandfather's expectations, and that someday I would return to him. And, in his defense, I even entertained those thoughts myself. I used to think that love needed to be fiery and passionate, not serene and quiet. But the 3 years I spent married to you were, honestly, the happiest of my life. I have never felt so at peace and joyful. How did I ever think that our life was boring, or that I didn't love you, or that you didn't matter to me? How could that be?" She sobbed. I stayed silent. Eventually, she said, "I messed up. I'm so sorry, Alex. Is there no chance for us now?" Plain water may be flavorless, but humans can't live without it. Clara didn't understand that before. Now she does, and it's gone. Months after the surgery, I returned to work. I'm a preschool teacher. The work is detailed and often involves dealing with unreasonable parents. but the children's pure and adorable smiles bring me a genuine sense of joy. It's like seeing a little version of myself with my grandma, living amidst constant happiness. She loved me so deeply. I nurture my students, clumsily imitating the way my grandma cared for the little me. After work one evening, I saw Dr. Evans at the school gate. It was her day off. She seemed a bit nervous. "Do you want to grab dinner?" she asked. The sky above was a beautiful cascade of golden clouds. I smiled and nodded. "Sure." My heart felt bright and unclouded by the hardships of the past.